When people hear that I'm both a head teacher and a commander in the Royal Naval Reserve, their eyebrows generally shoot somewhere towards the sky and the ceiling in surprise. Two careers that sound like they couldn't be further apart. One is about learning, nurturing, flourishing, supporting young people to be all they can be. The other, strategy, systems, national defence. But I'm here to say they're not opposites. They are connected. Leadership is not about control. It's about trust, humility, and connection. Now, the first lesson I had was when I was a very small little girl, even shorter than I am now. My father was a commanding officer in World War II of an ex-craft midget submarine. One evening, he was hosting a very important event in the mess. And I was in bed but couldn't sleep, so I did what any little girl would do. I wandered downstairs in my pyjamas with my favourite book clutched in my hand, and I walked into a room full of naval officers. Now, a naval captain caught my eye, and he came up to me, and he could have said, "Off you go, back to bed, now." But he didn't. He chose to make a connection. He spent some time with me, showing me how to make a paper water lily out of a napkin, something I can still do today, great for dinner party tricks. He also spent time talking to me, and he read me my favourite poem, The Jumblies by Edward Lear. Now, he chose connection. He chose to show care for me, and in return, supported my dad. I learnt then that leadership is about humanity as much as it is about authority. Years later, I was serving as a junior rate in the Ministry of Defence. And I was asked to go down to the ground floor and collect some very heavy boxes to take up to the 8th floor where our offices were. Now, I was struggling to carry these boxes. They were really heavy. When in walks the First Sea Lord himself, Admiral Boyce. I braced myself for a raised eyebrow at my clumsiness in trying to carry these boxes. But instead, he noticed me, he connected with me, and he gave me his squash racket to hold as he said, "Let me carry those boxes." And up the stairs he went, like a spring gazelle, I have to say, to the 8th floor with the boxes I was struggling with, leaving me standing there like a slightly confused ball boy. I realised that humility that he showed made me understand great leaders don't stand above people, they stand with them. Now, when I became a teacher, 4 years at university, learning the trade, my first week, my first class, all eyes looking at me, and I had that moment of doubt. Was this really the career I was cut out for? Should I really be here teaching these young children? When a little girl came up to me at the end of the day and said, "Miss, I really enjoyed that lesson. I'm so glad you're my teacher." And in that moment, I thought, phew, great, I'm doing okay. This is going to get better. This is all right. And that small connection gave me the confidence that I badly needed. And finally, as a head teacher a few years later, our school faced a crisis. I was unprepared, and all eyes were on me to set the tone, reassure the community. Now, I wish I could say to you that I stood there and gave a fantastic Churchillian speech, but I didn't. I took a moment and I made a cup of tea, because a cup of tea, I find, solves most problems, and it gave me the time to think. I called in the leadership team, and together we talked, together we came up with a plan, and together we led. And that's connection too. It's not about being the hero of the hour. It's about trusting and empowering the team. And because of that, we were stronger. Let me tell you about this chap, David Marquet. He wrote a great book called Turn the Ship Around. He's a US naval captain, and he was given command of the USS Santa Fe. It was the worst performing submarine in the fleet at the time. Now, he could have gone down that classic military model, tighten control, issue more orders, and demand obedience. But he didn't do that. He removed the word permission and replaced it with intend. So, instead of saying, Captain, permission to submerge the submarine, they would say, Captain, I intend to submerge the submarine. Now, this sounds like a really small tweak, something possibly inconsequential, but it had a profound effect. His crew became connected. They had to think on their own. They had to make their own decisions. And they had to trust each other. And Marquet's role changed as well. No longer was he the bottleneck for permission, but he became the coach for clarity and competence. So what happened to that Santa Fe? It went from being the worst performing submarine in the fleet to the best. And more officers from that submarine went on to command their own than any other to date. And Marquet proved what I'd been learning all along. When leaders trust their people, leadership strengthens and connections deepen. But this isn't new. Admiral Nelson, back in 1805 at Trafalgar, he was doing this. Instead of issuing long, rigid orders, he set a really clear mission and trusted his captains, and he trusted their judgment. That became known as the famous Nelson touch. But it wasn't about letting go completely. He set the direction, then he connected deeply with his people so that they then had the confidence to act boldly. And so whether I'm in a classroom or an operations room, that is what I try to emulate. I set the vision, but I trust my people to steer. As I say, whether standing in an ops room or standing in a classroom, the principles remain the same. Leadership is not about standing at the top. It lives in the trust that we nurture, it lives in the humility to serve others, and it lives in the connections that hold us together. So I hope you can now see that whilst these two careers seem so different, they are deeply connected. And at the truth is the humility, connections, and trust.